Hello everybody and welcome to a very interesting video. This will be the first in hopefully a series of videos where I break down a specific video or specific replay of a game that I played that I thought something interesting happened in, or I thought there were some learning incidents that could actually be drawn from in that instance. However, what we're looking at today is a game where I played a 6th Airborne against a 16th Panzer Division. Now, something I want to highlight right off the bat is I'm going to be very critical of the enemy that I'm playing against, but at the same time I'm going to be very critical of myself, because this video is not so much to really praise me or say that I've beaten this person, look how I've done it, but it's to break down how I've failed or how I succeeded in certain ways so that we can emulate that for future success. Now, obviously, at the beginning of the game, there was no way I could know that I was going to be going up against 16th Panzer. I was playing against a few people, General Falkelgar, my brother, Breyer playing 16th Panzer. We had 20th Panzer played by 100-1111111, whatever that is. And we had what I believe was 4th Munty played by Gamerlog. Meanwhile, definitely maybe on our team was playing 84th, I believe. I wasn't entirely positive. We had 97th Guard played by this fellow here. And on my far left over here, we had 2nd Indian Head played by a fellow, I can't pronounce that obviously, but some sort of foreign characters. Fast forwarded a little bit just to the start of the game, and my initial strategy honestly was just to hold this area. I knew that we had a pretty good chance at winning this area over here or this area over here, depending on where 16th Panzer went. I thought at the time, honestly, that 16th Panzer would be going over here, as that's typically where you see King Tigers. However, because it wasn't over there, I had high hopes that we were going to win this area with 84th Guard. Back in the middle area, I wasn't able to see yet that I was going to be facing off against 16th Panzer, but I was running some napalm bombers to stop people from rushing into my areas. However, I mistimed them a little bit and actually missed the MG42 that I was planning on killing. That aside, at this point I've identified that I'm fighting against 16th Panzer, and I've stopped them from getting this area here. I had pinged that I was doing this earlier in the game and hoped that my fellow teammate here would take that area there with the opportunity I've afforded him, but he ends up not really capitalizing on the napalming, so we end up losing that, and it was kind of a worthless napalming. My 6-pound guns, this one unloaded out of position because it was actually harried by enemy fire. My other 6-pound gun actually gets into position, but it's kind of going to be a little far forward. As I've said a few times now, I wasn't really expecting to be playing against a King Tiger division, especially not here. And so I was kind of at a weird loss as to how to deal with this thing right off the bat. So I was just hiding guns around, hoping that I could find an opportunity to grab a side armor shot on it or something like that. In the meantime, I'm setting up recon in the city in the form of these snipers, and these are going to allow me to see a ton of stuff. So with these recon snipers, I'm capable of seeing this Flak 38, I'm capable of seeing his tanks obviously, and this other Flak 38. Ever since the recon change, it's been monumental to be able to see enemy AT, enemy AA, or really enemy emplacements in general. Just the capability of seeing those really means that you're able to punish the enemy. Now, right off the bat, something that we all know about 16th Panzer is it has the King Tiger, obviously. But it also lacks in certain areas, such as infantry. So every infantry squad that I kill as 6th Airborne is going to be worth almost twice as much, because they are only capable of bringing in something like 60 units in a reasonable deck or 80 units in an unreasonable deck. The other thing that they're really lacking is AA. The AA department in 16th is really in a bad way, and so each AA piece that I kill is nearly irreplaceable rather. So I immediately spend some money to bring up the 75mm howitzers that I bring in this division at 2 stars. At 2 stars, these howitzers are fantastic. They fire immediately at whatever target, and being that I have radios in the form of these Canadian leaders, the Tetrarch Littlejohns, and a few other units, I'm going to have radio range on all of these things. As you can see, we can highlight the radio range, and I have radios all over the place here. Granted, some of the radios that it's showing are the enemy radios. A fun little bug from the developers. However, you can see that my radio range is actually quite substantial. This unit here has a range of about to here. It's about 1 kilometer. But because of that, I'm capable of harrying these AA pieces as much as possible. Now, Briar, he notes this, so he's already bringing his AA gun on the move to avoid these howitzers, and that's a very wise thing to do. However, in the current meta, stationary guns are very, very, very slow, and thus they're very, very incapable of actually avoiding enemy fire. On top of that, he's moving them into Vickers range, which is just going to get them killed even faster. However, we are seeing the King Tiger over here harrying my forces, and there's not much I can do about that. But something that is worth noting is, if that King Tiger was a Panzer IV, there's still nothing I could do about it right now. So it's worth noting that he's very, very, very much over-invested on this King Tiger. He didn't know that he was going to be fighting against 6th Airborne, so we can forgive the first one. However, because this is 210 points just bearing down on my infantry over here, it's kind of a waste of 210 points. With 210 points, you could bring up 3 Panzers and a squad of infantry, and that would be infinitely more effective in this particular instance than the King Tiger. On top of that, we're seeing no pressure put on this open ground here, and so really it becomes more of a liability than anything else. Now he's stuck trying to defend this thing rather than stuck trying to use it attacking. Now, to criticize myself, I am literally not pushing at all. My current strategy is just to hold out. Everything I have is kind of in this line, and if he ever breaks through this line, all of my guns are in jeopardy. A few times during this game, he actually does push through over here on the left-hand side, rendering my guns back here in a lot of danger. This air landing squad I forgot to put on return fire, and so opens fire and ultimately dies for that decision. The Tetrarch Littlejohn is a little worthless here, as it's kind of against a Stug at a range where the Stug is actually going to win. So that's another misplay on my part. This area here becomes quite a bit of contention later on in the game, to where I can really do nothing about it because it's an open field, and once Tigers start pouring through this area, it becomes a real problem. However, being that I've already harried his AA, this is huge for me. So we're already down 2 Flak 38s, or excuse me, 1 Flak 38. The carrier is currently advancing on my city, which is going to be hugely detrimental for him, being that I just brought up a bunch of Tetrarchs. My plan with the Tetrarchs is I have 8 of them in Phase A. Now, with the Tetrarchs, if I'm able to surrender out a King Tiger with 8 Tetrarchs, and every Tetrarch dies, it is still a 10-point swing in my favor, right? So Tetrarchs are 25 points each. At 8 coming in, that's 200 points. 210 points for the Königstiger each, and if I get that kill, it's just going to be amazing. So my strategy to deal with this King Tiger was to deal with a lot of their AA, then bring in my Mosquito napalm bombers and bomb the King Tiger so that it begins falling back, and then surrender it out with the Tetrarchs. Or, failing that, use the 75mm howitzers to stun it out, and again surrender it out with the Tetrarchs. As you can see, I've begun bringing in the Mosquitoes, and I've also commanded them all to attack it just to kind of keep it in place. Being that the driver's knocked out, this was superfluous, but we're doing what we can. Then I command the Tetrarchs to immediately fast move up there. Now, what I'm not banking on is the fact that Briar has brought in a Stug and a Panzer IV Recon tank over here. So without those, I think that these Tetrarchs would have actually succeeded in their goal of taking this out. Another thing that we've identified by this run is that the enemy AA is right here. Being that we had a bunch of planes in the sky, we're able to identify that and further harry those into the dirt, as I begin doing immediately with the 75mm howitzers. It's worth noting that as an infantry division, especially when fighting against a division that is going to specialize in these open ground conflicts. It is imperative that you harry their AA as much as possible. You need to kill all of their AA 100% of the time, especially as 6th Airborne if your Typhoons are going to be great late game like you need them to be. However, over here on the left, as I mentioned earlier, Briar has immediately pushed me down. I only had the air landing there that I forgot to micromanage, and now it is just a Tetrarch Littlejohn standing between Briar and ultimately seizing all of my guns. So this is obviously not a great thing. It's also putting a lot of undue pressure on my friend over here, who's lost an entire reinforcement road to these Stugs that are just coming up on these roads. So not a great play on my part here. However, this wolf is going to come in for a bombing run. Ultimately, it's misaimed, so it only stuns the 75mm howitzer. But 6th Airborne, something worth noting, has literally no AA in it. It's capable of bringing in a few things like Polstons, tri-Polstons, or the like of that, but being that Briar just noticed something very integral to his plan, I have literally no way of stopping him, especially not in Phase A. So all he has to do is continue bringing in these fighter bombers and potentially harry my units. However, he is using them on the Vickers guns instead of on the howitzers like he should have been, probably afraid that I'd bring up AA. However, I'm completely incapable of doing so. I've brought up some air landing to further stem the tide, and it looks like things have shifted around such that the Stug has gone down to the Tetrarch, and one of the Panzer Grenadier squads has also gone down, meaning that I've taken control of this area back. However, the Tetrarch does go down to a side shot from one of General Falkelgar's units over here. Once we take out these Panzer Grenadier, however, we're going to get control of this flag for a little while here, bringing us not quite to the double tick yet, but to a fairly decent way there. I immediately buy a Tempest come Phase B and take out the enemy cluster bombers that are coming to harry this force here. I thought I would assault this area, especially with the off-map support. However, my off-map truck went down off screen a little bit just to that cluster bomber that we just saw. And the off-map wasn't incredibly effective, all things told. I really needed it to land squarely on one of these units and take it out. However, it just really stunned everything, and so we were kind of doomed over there, especially because I lost the other two shots due to the cluster bombing. However, we see this King Tiger has repaired and rearmed, coming back up here for another tango with my units. The bad part is he's pushing it up very, very close. Now, the closeness of the King Tiger benefits me more than it does him. Sure, it's going to be able to support his units better, being that it's closer to the front. However, the closer it is to me, the closer it is to radio range 1, and the closer it is to Piat and 6-pound gun range, making it much more easily destroyed. My 75mm guns are really just hounding these hull-locked vehicles. The Stug is incapable of firing on the move, and so if it ever stops to fire, you're capable of just firing artillery at it to stun it or potentially kill it by hitting it on the top armor. However, something hindsight not being 20/20 and all, Briar cannot see anything. He's got his off-clower back here in a relatively good spot. However, he cannot see any of my units that are currently in the city, so he has to assume that I have a billion trillion infantry in there. While this isn't the case in reality I'm actually very close to losing this city if he just brings up the adequate amount of things. However, being that I've punished his AA, he got it really close to the front lines, I'm able to bring the Typhoon in to punish the King Tiger. Now, this doesn't do much for me, honestly speaking. The King Tiger wasn't really much of a nuisance in my side, and so all it's going to do is force Briar to reinvest in tanks. What I'm hoping he does is brings up another King Tiger, because this means that he's wasted another 210 points to just sit in the same area that the first King Tiger was in. However, he doesn't really do this. He brings in a bunch of Stugs, which is a much better option in my opinion. He's also begun bringing up the Mobilwagen, but being that I've already gone so deep into artillery, it's kind of already too far gone, as it were. The fighter bomber's coming in again, and this time it will smack home on top of my 75mm howitzer. Again, still no AA coverage, but I will punish it with the Tempest Mark V. The Tempest Mark Vs are still one of my favorite planes in the game, being that I can just right-click on a plane, kill that plane, and then leave. The end. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This assault on the city is actually coming in pretty hot and heavy. 3 Panzer Grenadier with Panzerfaust, 1 Panzer Grenadier regular coming in right off the bat, and another one off to the left. So I'm actually in a weird way where I'm kind of going to lose. The 17-pound gun is getting bombed out by the fighter bomber, and here comes the missile plane to try and do something, though I'm not entirely sure what. It looked like it just gun runned that Ziz-2. This assault is likely the closest I came to losing this entire front, as if the Stug was able to achieve this road here, it would have all been over for me. However, I'm able to bring in the Typhoon to stop the Stug, as he still hasn't gotten any adequate AA up here on the fronts. And because of the abysmal turn radius on the missile planes, I'm able to get away without even being hit a single time. However, Breyer has managed to take this area. The glider crews are making an attempt to get it back, and at this point I'm just at the mercy of radio ranges. So I currently do have a radio range here, being that I still have the Canadian leaders, and I've intentionally turned off their Lee Enfields that they don't open fire on these units. I really don't want my radios going down, as without my radios I'm really doomed in this situation. The Panzer Grenadier are going to beat the air landing in a one-on-one fight, so I really don't want to take it at a one-on-one fight. The glider crews are again pushing in, and with the stunning coming in from the 75mm guns, we're going to actually take that area back. However, the rocket plane does come back and grab my 75mm gun, rendering me down to just 2 of them. However, they are at 3 stars due to the rifle leader nearby. Breyer begins to push over here with the Panzer IV-J, and I'm going to bump the speed up 2 times 2 just to get through this initial slog here. Gamer log over here on the right surrenders out from the onslaught of Definitely Maybe. And in the middle we do see the Mobilwagen coming up to really harry my infantry. However, the bad part about my current situation is all of my snipers have gone down, and so I don't have any recon in this area. Other than the Mobilwagen, I can't see anything going on in this field area here, and so I'm at a huge disadvantage until I can get one of these snipers back up. So I immediately set about trying to bring up snipers to reinforce this area. This is going to be a huge matter for me, as currently Breyer has this Aufklauer team set up here, watching everything that I'm doing. Before that goes down, he's actually capable of seeing a bunch of these infantry and the ingressing snipers, which he stops with the Mobilwagen, knowing full well that if I get the snipers up there, I'll be able to see everything he's doing. Currently, he has Aufklauer that are moving up, or, well, stationary here is fine, but he's able to see quite a few things with that still, such as this AT gun here and this OB-25 here, as well as this entire road leading up to the city. That said, I'm able to get the Grenadier Voltigeurs in here, and they each have 2 Brens, so they're going to stop a lot of these assaults, more or less. Breyer running the rocket plane on the AT gun there, and a few more AT planes on a few other things. The Ju-188 coming in to bomb Indian Head over here, really punishing us for that lack of AA, especially in the middle area. However, I am in return punishing Breyer right back with these Tempest Mark V, of which I have 2 in my army right now. A great note about the Tempest Mark V is I would immediately set about keybinding these if you're playing with them. Especially for newer players that don't know this, you can select planes that aren't on the map and hit Control and whatever number you'd like to keybind them to, thus rendering them to that button. Instead of having to go down here, find the plane that you want to bring in, right-click on the map, bring it in, and then actually do the things you want, you can just hit the 1 key, for example, and then right-click on a plane to kill it. And the Tempests are probably the only planes in the game that without issue will come in and just kill it. That's it. Breyer is failing to move this mobile wagon right away, and it does take a little bit of damage from the 75mm howitzers that I'm still continuing to ruin him with. Right now I'm targeting the Tiger E just to try and put a little bit more pressure on that, and we've lost this middle area here where Breyer has just figured out that we have nothing watching it. I bring in the Tempest Mark V to bomb the Panzer Grenadier, but it's not going to finish them off. We have found ourselves firmly in Phase C now, and the AI over on the right that's currently fighting Definitely Maybe has begun to push him back. Thus, we are beginning to lose our advantage, bringing us to dead even at this point in the game. Falkelgar is pushing through over on this side, and I'm bringing in a Typhoon that loses sight of the Aufklar Panzer J, before it's able to drop its munitions, and actually goes down to a Flak 43, which is odd. Typically you don't see the Typhoons going down so easily. The air landing here proving why I hate the Piat so much, in that they literally refuse to hit this Panzer IV and render it in a great position to overlook my artillery guns. The artillery guns are still harrying this area, having taken out one mobile wagon and coming for that Tiger now. I immediately stop firing with one of the artillery guns to swap it over to its heat shells, which it begins lobbing over at the Panzer IV. 2 penetrations will kill the Panzer IV, but the heat is woefully inaccurate, sitting at a 30% accuracy. Even at 3 stars, it's not terribly great, and counter battery has begun to fall on me. Now, something that I'm doing very, very poorly here is not moving the supply trucks away from the units. Supply trucks have this interesting mechanic where if they explode, that happens. That was an excellent zoom in time for me. If they explode, they take things nearby them with them, kind of like a Bogward 4 exploding. So if you're bringing in your artillery units, immediately move your supply trucks away from the artillery units. It's just silliness that lost me that gun there. The challengers here are coming up to really harry these infantry, and I'm hoping I'll get them into sub 1 kilometer engagements with the Tigers, where they will probably win, being that they acquire and fire faster than the Tigers, and have a decent chance at penetration there too, being that they're packing the 17-pound gun at 170mm of penetration. Breyer is now scared of pushing forward. He's lost a lot of his infantry in trying to push into this city, and so he's almost completely out of ability to take this area. Being that he has no more infantry, he'd be much better served pushing elsewhere, and eventually he does bring in a King Tiger for this side. The 132mm off-map truck bringing in that riverboat to bear and ruining Falkelgar's immediate reinforcements there, taking us back a flag and bringing us back to even, where they were taking on us just moments before. 111 has brought in a bunch of battery that he's going to use as counter battery. Eventually, however, immediately he's trying to take out our AA. Currently back here I have one Tripolston that's meant as sort of a dissuading factor, and I have a Challenger that's taking an engagement at 2 kilometers that he will ultimately lose against the Tiger before I'm able to back him away. Now the Tigers are probably his best bet at taking this area back. Between the Tigers and the Panzer IVs, which are also going to be an excellent unit here, he's going to be able to put a lot of pressure on me, being that I just have no way of dealing with them short of bringing up the 17-pound guns. And he's been doing an excellent job of watching where my 17 guns are placed and just punishing them for existing. He's bombed out quite a few of them at this point, and so those are very hefty reinforcement costs that I'm having to pay each time, 70 points a gun. We do grab one of the flak balloon carriers over here with the artillery, and that's going to be huge for us. And immediately we begin firing on the Tiger, as it's putting a lot of undue pressure on us. This Tiger E goes down over here to the Typhoon 2, or 1Bs rather, and that's going to lose them a lot of pressure over here. Something to be said is Kalgar could have done a much better job of moving these Flak 43s into a position where they're mutually beneficial for both himself and for Breyer, such as this light forest here. Being that he's not doing that, Breyer's really suffering from this area here being open ground that's completely undefended. On top of that, something Breyer could have done better is bring in his mobile wagons or his SDKFZ-71s in sort of a clump and move that clump constantly. what I tend to do is shift command my anti-aircraft weapons back and forth, grab motorized anti-aircraft guns, and just tell them attack, move here, attack, move here, attack, move here, attack, move here. That makes them very difficult to pin down, as even you're not sure where they're going most of the time. Briar does bring in a King Tiger to punish this open area over here on the left, and he's brought up an SDK of Z7-1, which is going to dissuade any immediate aircraft cover that I can provide for it. I take note of it when I bring in these Tempests to make those bombing runs, and so my 75mm guns are almost certainly going to target it right away. However, it looks like we are going for this MG34 instead. Silliness, it must have been that I wasn't paying attention. We immediately swapped a gap, grabbing up these battery fury. Now, something to be noted is you definitely want, more than you want AA, you want to make sure there are no radios up here. Granted, I can't see this Pioneer Fuhrer, but if they were able to get radios up here, then they're going to be able to get corrected shots on my artillery, and corrected counter battery is ridiculously effective. Over here, Briar has moved his SDK of Z7-1s, and I couldn't see them at first. However, I can now. And being that that is how it is, I see they're moving, and I guess where they're moving to. I actually misguessed a little bit and correct the shot there right as we get there. 17-pound gun picks up one of them, and immediately the battery comes in to try and sweep up the other. It does begin falling back, and that means that this King Tiger is now open and exposed to these Typhoons, which sweep in, finish it off. The air landing are currently rebuffing another assault, and the Grenadier Voltigeurs are doing an excellent job of cleaning things up. The Tempests come in just to make sure we have things under control, and being that Briar has just lost his AA, this is going off without a hitch. Not only that, but this identifies where these other AA pieces are. My snipers are back into position, and so I'm back into a situation where I can see most of the game. Recon is so important in this current meta, and even more important, turn off the sniper rifle if you're not ready to use it. If this is my only Recon unit up here, I want to use the sniper rifle as sparingly as possible. And that really just means not wasting ammunition while firing into enemy areas, or not wasting the unit by kind of just firing and then getting exposed to tanks and whatnot. So really be careful with your Recon, especially in this current meta, is what that rambling sentence was trying to be. This sniper is actually going to end up getting eyesight on this SDK of Z7-1, and so I turn the sniper rifle back on to grab that. The Focke-Waffe is coming in, gonna bomb again on my road here. That takes out another 75mm gun, and the Tempests were busy elsewhere, so they had to reroute quickly to take out the units. The 7-1s are coming back up, and he's bringing up another mobile wagon. Now, something to be noted is, at some point you want to stop with anti-aircraft weapons, especially when I have this many 75mm howitzers still up. His better option would have been to just cease all hostilities here in this specific area and focus on counter-battering these 75mm howitzers, or on just really shelling down this area in particular. Being that I have a radio in here in the form of this rifle leader, there's really not much that's going to stick if he pushes through over here. However, we do bring in a bombing run that is ultimately ineffective. We can't really see this area, and so we're kind of shelling it indiscriminately, although we have nothing there that pushes front lines, is what it ends up being. Air landing are coming in, and I'm being kind of a noob and just leaving them all bunched up, or using a few other horrible tactics such as moving under enemy fire into Panzer IVs. My Typhoons are coming in over here on the left, but a lot of them are going to get stunned out by these 88s that have begun advancing that I hadn't seen until they began firing. I don't have a great radio solution on the left, as most of this guy's radios have been completely ruined by Kelgar, and so we're kind of at the mercy of these 88s that are just marching across the map, especially being that we can't see them. If you look at this from our perspective, we can't see anything that's going on in this area due to our abject lack of recon. The only recon we have over here being the Ranger Marauders that are in kind of a bad spot. One of my friends brings up a bunch of planes to really punish this lack of AA again, and I am running out of options to deal with these Stugs that are just advancing up the road. Luckily, my challengers get here at just the right time to stop them, and we really do rebuff this assault with the help of the Typhoon 1Bs, as these units have been stunned over here due to artillery. Moving it back down to ×1 speed, we have Guardia coming up over here, as well as Rizved Dozer, and a rather concerted effort by Breyer to retake this area in the form of 5 squads of Panzer Grenadier MG-34s. Now, if I wasn't being such a noob, I would have these air landing in various defensive positions or whatnot, but as they stand currently, they're just kind of piled up. We pick up another Mobilwagen with our artillery, and the artillery immediately sets to work on stunning these infantry that are going to be coming in. Now, this is another instance of I see that the anti-aircraft weapons have been dealt with, and immediately bring in my Tempests. 6th Airborne is really punishing if you are not micromanaging and being very careful about your AA. In fact, I would venture to say that if you're having the same Phase A and Phase B start as Breyer did here, you're probably going to lose against 6th Airborne simply because they have so much ability to punish that late game. The howitzers immediately begin setting off to kill that 38mm gun, 20mm, Flak 38. And there is only one other AA piece on the entire center of the map in the form of this Mobilwagen. If we take that out and this 20mm over here, Breyer will have literally no options for dealing with my Tempests on the front line currently. Kelgar, seeing this, wants to help his ally out and brings in 2 Flak 43s, but again, this might be too little too late, especially being that he's bringing them into my radio range. We talked a little bit about this after the fact, but if he had spent these same points that he spent on the Flak 43s, 80 points each, on infantry, they likely would have pushed me out of this city, being that Breyer is also bringing up a bunch of Stugs to put pressure on this area as well. I really have nothing to stop the Stugs, except for a 17-pound gun back here, and ultimately my infantry crews in here. The glider crews are great at just being meat shields, however they're going to be fairly tragic at actually dealing damage to enemy vehicles or, God forbid, enemy infantry. The 75mm pick up on the fact that this Mobilwagen has begun opening fire on my glider crews, and the 17-pound gun is also having none of it. The shells come down, and that is likely going to be the end for this Mobilwagen. 17-pound gun finishes it off. That brings us to a point where the only AA on the map is unknown to me. I don't know that these Flak 43s are here, but I've taken out all of Breyer's AA, so I immediately set about trying to punish this lack of AA. My Tempests and my Typhoons are going to make short work of Breyer if he tries to push into my area again. Now, at this point, Breyer has all but given up over here, and he's going to begin bringing up his Tigers to punish this open ground. This is excellent. It cuts off my reinforcements from 2nd Indian Head over here in the form of these Shermans, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on this flag, which should be mine all told. JU-188's coming in to bomb the Shermans just to make sure they don't get any lucky hits on the Stug 3s. And currently I have no way of retaking this area. Pushing against the MG-34 isn't terribly much the issue, but there are tigers and lions and bears, oh my, coming up to destroy me, so I'm really at a disadvantage in this open field area. However, we do still see some conflicts going on over here in the proper city, which is really at my advantage. On the right-hand side, it looks like Def Mabe has pulled it all together and begun pushing into the enemy. This guy has rebuffed the attacks of 1-1-1-1-1-1-1, and that's more than enough for what we needed. It's worth noting that while I'm winning here, and while the team is winning here, I am technically losing. Currently, I've lost one of my forward flags in the form of this one currently held by these MG-34 Panzer Grenadier. So, all told, being that Breyer is losing a tremendous amount of things, he's still technically winning in the conquest aspect of things, in that he holds one of my forward flags and is putting pressure on my back lines because of it. I kind of fall apart here and stop using the howitzers as I'm running a little low on ammo, so I want to conserve it for things that I actually need to kill, and I can't quite identify where these 43s are. We get a few good bombs off there, and if we had something in position, we could really punish that, but they were kind of just senseless bombs. I don't know if I was frag seeking or what I was doing, but it wasn't really effective. This 17-pound gun is in a position where it will stop these Stugs if they push out, but that's about all it will do. I have another one over here, again, just to try and contain this area. On the far left over here, there are Stugs galore coming up to try and punish this area, a bunch of Panzer 4Gs from 11111, and Breyer is bringing up another Tiger E, meaning that this open area is all but doomed. Back here, there's no pushing into our friend, as he has fallen back and made a terrible mess of this forest in the form of Guardia DP from my friend on my right, and engineers from my friend on the left. These Flak 43s get into melee combat with the glider crews, prompting my immediate revenge, or should be, there it is, on the Flak 43s. Two more squads coming up, and again, these are very difficult for me to see. I see Opel Blitzes coming up, but I'm not sure what they are, as they're moving just outside of my recon range. The shells begin falling on the Flak 43s. Again, I think that I'm killing the last of their anti-aircraft weapons in this area, or at the very least, I'm stunning them out. Stug 3 goes down to the Challenger, and this is really why I brought up the Challenger. The Challenger is now going to take an engagement against this Tiger here in a moment, but this Tiger off on the left actually harries him before he can get into position, and so he is going to be forced to back up and hope for the best that he can get away from these things. Breyer brings up three Pack 40s to harry my back lines and retakes this flag that I've managed to take through bombing. Breyer immediately begins bringing up this Tiger to try and grab this flag. If he can grab this flag, it's going to tie us up and allow them time to really deal with whatever's going on the right and whatever's going on the left. The Challenger goes down to that Tiger. It was a dicey call on his part, but it did work out, and now the Tiger has gotten hung up on some glider crews, meaning that it's being mismicroed. However, the Tiger does begin moving up, preying on the fact that I don't have any AT in the city, and being that my only AT are these Gammon bombs with a 100-meter range, and the Piat, he may as well be right. The Piat will literally never hit it, regardless of range, and the Gammon bombs are going to struggle too, but the 17-pound gun actually does grab the kill before it's necessary. My 75mm howitzers are again grabbing this AA. There's been a lot of it coming up this game, and this 88 really seals the deal in that I won't be able to bomb this area, but now the only thing in this area is Recon and AA, so it doesn't matter. On the left over here, there's not much in the way of AA, just this 43 and these 43s as far as they can support, but because they're not as far forward as they should be, my Typhoons are still going to be able to get through, and these PE2s for that matter. The PE2s coming in to punish the Pack 40s, and I immediately seize the opportunity of the other planes being in the air to bomb everything that I can. IL-2's coming in abundance to take out that Tiger, and the other one's going to get stunned out and probably retreat for quite a while. This is also identifying quite a few AA guns, which I immediately begin targeting. This 88 back here is my first victim, although it is a little out of my radio range, so I'm going to have a lot of trouble actually killing it, but easy enough to pin it down. On the left, Breyer has brought up a few 11111 has brought up a few Panzer 4s to really press this area, and honestly what they should have done is pushed into this area proper. There's really nothing back here that can stop them, all the demolition groups being on this side. However, an absurd amount of points is being spent to hold this area back, and that's all it's really doing is capping the one flag. However, it is also putting pressure over here, grabbing this other flag, so something to be said about that. The snipers open fire on this Flak 43, and it's going to expose a few other things for me, so I begin firing at the Flak 43 with the 75 mils to really punish this AA. The 88 has gone down. Glider crews are currently fighting the Panzer Grenadier Führer, taking out the last radio they have on this front, stopping all these Vespies and these Hummels from really doing anything dangerous to me. I bring up a last-ditch effort of a ton of different things because I've been saving points like a noob, and really, honestly, spend your points. If I'd spent my points, we would have won this game an hour and a half earlier, but I'm kind of done. Tempests are coming in, thinking that I've dealt with all the AA. However, the Flak 43 will harry my boys, as well as this Flak 38 over here. We grab the 2 mortars before it's too late, though. Before they begin firing, that is, and the 75 mils immediately decide that the Flak 38 has lived its last day on this planet. The Tetrarchs and the Daimlers are going to begin their dark work of pushing through this area. Daimlers being incredibly dangerous at that close range, only with a 1,000 meter range rather, but firing at 15 rounds a minute at base with a 130 millimeter penetration. These things are incredible at that short range. I take out the last Flak 43, rendering this front completely free of AA, and grab this Tiger also. Flak guns are opening up, as well as the Flak 43s over here, stunning out one of my Typhoons, unfortunately, but we do still grab the Tiger. And that AA is not long for this world, as the 75 mils have begun opening up on it. The Daimlers are making their suicide charge across the map, just trying to get that back line, but Kalgar sees this and brings up a couple martyrs to stop that. The supply trucks are coming through, and this was sort of a last-ditch funny effort by Breyer just to bring up a few units to maybe stop me or identify where my units were, but ultimately they just end up feeding the beasts back here. The Daimlers open fire on this Flak gun here, dropping it out of its transport before it's able to get up to the front lines. However, there is another Flak gun over here. It's something to be said about the impressive number of Flak guns that they have on their team. These 43s are getting stunned out by aircraft, which is kind of oxymoronic and hilarious, and these Guardia have yet to unload from my friend on the right, probably because he's fighting across 3 fronts. My Daimlers have all been stunned by the martyrs, and that's kind of to be expected. I was pushing at their spawn with them. PE2s are coming in, however, to punish the last of their AA, and IL2s are going to finish off this Tiger, most likely. The Typhoons, who are commanded to also take out that Tiger, are retreating as due course. The Centaurs have begun opening up over this open field here and just trying to punish all of the MG42s that were over here, while Breyer has brought up his last King Tiger in his division over onto this side to punish this open area, but it's a little too late. Mustangs are coming in to punish it and highlighting the fact that they have no AA. So even if this game continues on for any length of time past this, even though it only has 40 seconds left, we will be able to punish all of these tanks, being that we now know there's no AA over here. Over on my front, we've finally taken this area here that we've been accosting since the beginning of the game, and the Daimlers have pulled their heads out of their asses and begun actually moving toward the forest that I told them to hide in. PE2s again coming in to punish this AA and grabbing it up. I think that is the end of Breyer's AA, and probably also going to spell the end of the game, even if it weren't ending already. That brings us to the end there, with myself sitting at 6,986 to 3,940, top fragging out, but not really grabbing anything. So even though Breyer only went 4,089 to 7,915, he did grab a forward flag for a lot longer than I was capable of grabbing any forward ground. However, it's worth noting that as an airborne deck, especially against a King Tiger division, your only goal in life is to survive long enough for your air to matter. So make sure you're capitalizing on enemy AT and AA, taking those out, being that, especially in 16th Panzer, they don't have a lot in the way of those two things. Past that, you're going to want to immediately punish as much as you can of the enemy's infantry, being that they don't have many of those. All in all, Kelgar did an excellent job on that game. Breyer did an excellent job of grabbing forward ground in that game. However, it was going to be a loss eventually just because of how positively I was trading, being that I had only lost 4,000 to the 7,000 I had killed nearly. All that said, though, that is going to do it for this video. It was quite a long one, so props to you if you were able to stick to it all the way to the end, and sorry that you had to listen to my voice the entire way through, as it slowly deteriorated after a solid hour of talking. However, I do hope that you were able to pick up at least some of what I was capable of doing against a tank division, especially being that 6th Airborne is probably the archetypical doesn't have a way to deal with heavy tanks deck other than planes, and 16th Panzer is the archetypical heavy tank division. So if you're able to employ a lot of these same strategies, punishing enemy AA and then punishing the tanks past the AA, being that you now have the superior air force, then you're going to do a very good job of taking out enemy tank divisions, especially in the current meta of the game. Remember to keep your recon up on the front lines and keep them spotting everything that you can, and especially remember that all because there's a King Tiger on your front doesn't mean that all of your attention needs to go toward that King Tiger. It's more of a liability for the enemy in this instance than it is for you, being that it is a 210 point sink that is just going to fire as quickly as a Panzer IV would and be almost as effective as the Panzer IV would, especially in that instance. Again, though, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you guys in the next video.